Welcome. I'm Diane Meyerhoff, host for Town Meeting TV's presentation of the Winooski budget and ballot items, part of our ongoing Town Meeting 2021 coverage. The show is being aired live on Town Meeting TV, Comcast Channel 1087, and streamed live on our YouTube channel. We welcome your comments and questions. If you're watching this program live, please join the conversation at 862-3966. I'm joined by Jessie Baker, the city manager, and Kristine Lott, the mayor. Thank you both so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having us, Diane.
It's a pleasure. So tell us, what do Winooski voters need to know for town meeting day?
Well, we don't have too much. We have our fiscal year 2022 budget that we're going to dig into tonight, and then a couple of ballot items at the end of this presentation. So our city manager, Jessie Baker, is sharing her screen with this presentation. And we wanted to start by sharing our values, Winooski's community values, which sort of drive all of the decision making and how we choose to spend our money. So we are founding our work in a community vision that was driven through a lot of outreach process over the years, that we're a small and connected city, that we welcome newcomers, and that we're a place where everyone can participate in the success of their own families and the community at whole. So this value statement actually drives a strategic vision, which we use for sort of all of our city planning. So we are an affordable, livable, and diverse community. And the values that residents want to focus on and really invest resources in surround economic vitality, our municipal infrastructure, housing, and having safe, healthy, and connected residents in our community. So from that work of getting to that value statement and that strategic vision, we then, over the last several years, have done a lot of planning, also with community outreach involved. So, you know, we have our master plan, which has overarching goals for what we want to be as a city, and some more detailed plans that inform that. So a housing needs assessment and a transportation plan, and these sort of plans that say, these are our priorities, these are the streets we want to fix next, these are the housing goals that we want to meet. That led to, over the last couple of years, some bond votes for big projects that we're going to undertake that will lead us to that vision. So the pool rehabilitation, Main Street revitalization, a new garage in our downtown. So having made those commitments already, we have been focused more recently and are focusing in this budget and into the future on carrying out those existing projects and commitments and really shifting any new effort into focusing on affordability and equity in our city. So while all of our big projects have experienced some amount of delay due to the pandemic, we've still achieved a lot of progress in the past year. So I wanted to pass it to Jessie to share some of the good work, highlights of good work that has taken place and that our city staff have carried out with our community.
Thank you, Mayor Lott, and thank you, Diane, for hosting this event tonight. So I think we would be remiss if we did not start our report out this year without talking about COVID-19 and the impacts of COVID-19 on our community. So as you can imagine, in most years, we really try and stay very close to our strategic vision and our work plans that are adopted by the council and leadership team. And this year, we really had to focus on our COVID-19 response. So in doing so, we were able to ensure the public's safety through the governor's Stay Home, Stay Safe order, ensure that we continue to maintain our essential infrastructure. We sent out hundreds of communications to our residents to ensure that all had the information they needed to keep themselves and their families safe. We did experience, 21 of our staff did experience furlough, both to protect the city's finances and also out of respect for our neighbors who were furloughed or laid off themselves and not being paid for not working. We stood up bi-weekly Winooski leadership briefings with leaders from across the city to ensure that all work was coordinated and we were sharing services as effectively as possible in order to meet the needs of our residents. And of course, we dealt over the summer with our Winooski Burlington COVID outbreak, and in partnership with the Vermont Department of Health, ALV, USCRI, and many other partners, were able to contain that first community spread outbreak in Vermont very quickly. So while we were doing all of that COVID response, we were also able to continue work towards our strategic vision, and I believe we are poised now to come out of the pandemic stronger than ever. So we continued work on our investments, our major projects that the mayor mentioned earlier, the redevelopment of 17 Abenaki Way, our Hickok Street reconstruction project, our Main Street revitalization project, and of course we finished construction on the Myers Memorial Pool, which we are thrilled to be opening this summer. Pool passes are now officially on sale if you are interested in buying your pool pass for this summer. We continue to see private investment in redevelopment of our community. We brought back all of our staff from furlough in early August. We hired 15 exceptional new staff, including a shout out to our new recreation manager and our new library director, who are both just bringing so many opportunities to connect to the community, even in these times of virtual events. And then, of course, we tried to leverage as much COVID grant funding as we could, strengthened our connections with our community partners that will last well beyond the pandemic, and hopefully build trust with our neighbors. Shall I turn it back over to you, Mayor, for the budget introduction?
So when we got to spending for the FY22 budget, we really wanted to recognize the impacts that COVID-19 has had on our community. And so council asked staff to create a budget that retained essential services for community members, but also keep any increase in the tax rate below cost of living and inflation, recognizing both the need for services, but also the financial impacts that people have been experiencing. So we talked about retaining services like meals and childcare, shifting some of our capital improvement focus to sidewalks as folks are spending more time outdoors and in the city, and keeping that tax rate increase under 2%, which staff were able to do for us. So on the next slide, we will see the numbers. What we are looking at for this budget is going to be a 1.83% increase from this year, which should amount to about $47 on the average tax bill for a Winooski resident. So this is, you can see here the number laid out, how much more, how much the budget has grown versus taxes raised. Wanted to call out here that we are also seeing more non-tax revenue. So voters a couple of years ago approved a local options tax, and that's helping to sort of shift some of the cost burden away from tax bills and into this other revenue stream. So what is in this budget? You know, we're retaining the existing level of services that the city is providing. So the same amount of staff, same community services programming, street upkeep, that sort of thing, with the exception that we received a substantial grant to fund a new equity director role that will support our focus on building more equity in Winooski. So that is a change in staffing, but it doesn't have an impact on this budget that we're voting on. That grant funds us for 3 years. We also call out in here that we're retaining funding for the school resource officer position. There have been discussions in the school community about shifting that role, and you know, that could change. So we will respond to that as decisions are made, but for now we're carrying that through. So why, if we're retaining the same services, why the increase at all? And that is because the cost of goods and services increases, the cost of healthcare increases. We provide cost of living increases to our staff. And so you know, supporting the same services to our community is always going to cost a little bit more each year. We have a lot of staff doing a lot of this work. We also have an annual 5% increase for funding capital improvements because those, you know, the cost of goods continues to increase. And that's a value that folks have said they want to see us continue to improve infrastructure. We have also made some modest increases to funding regional programs that support our community, like Town Meeting TV.
Yay.
the Winooski Valley Parks District, and we are increasing our contribution to the Winooski School District newsletter. You know, Winooski doesn't have a local paper or a formal way for people to keep track of what's going on. So we're trying to build that resource out that makes it to every home, every mailbox in Winooski so that people can keep up with us. So now we have the hard numbers. These charts show how our expenses and revenues break down across the general fund budget. So when I say general fund, that doesn't include like water and wastewater, which are separate through utility bills. Those are a separate fund. So what you can see here is sort of where we're getting money from. Most of that being taxes, but a good chunk of it coming from other revenues as we try to diversify our revenue streams in Winooski, as well as how our expenses break down. You know, where is that revenue going? So I just mentioned general fund versus other funds. Here are the other funds. You can see our water, wastewater, rental registry, et cetera. This is sort of all of the money that is being managed with city services in this picture here. I do want to, while we're at the slide, call out, you'll see something on there called TIF. If you're not familiar, TIF stands for Tax Increment Financing District. This is the funding mechanism that was used to redevelop the downtown several years ago. We are still paying that debt off. And so you'll see that 23% of this pie is going to those debt payments. We should be paying that off in, I think, 2024. And at which time the revenue from that development will come back to the city and the education fund. So I just wanted to mention that as a preview, as we're going to be having community conversations about how do we address that? What do we do with that new revenue? And this is another way to look at things. Service areas breakdown, kind of more of a values look at where our money is going. So, you know, roughly 30% is going to public works and upkeeping our city and infrastructure, about 20% to public safety, 10% to community programs, et cetera. So this is just sort of another way to look at how the spending goes. Wanted to call out, you know, in addition to the municipal tax increase of roughly $47, we are also doing rate increases to water and wastewater. We started this, I think, 2 years ago. The rates had been stagnant for quite some time, and we're no longer keeping up with maintaining the infrastructure that supports our water and wastewater facility. So we have been doing incremental rate increases until we can get in I think maybe it's another 2 years until we're at a sustainable level where we're collecting enough from ratepayers to actually keep up the facility. So the total there is probably about $39 a year in increased water bill for the average home in Winooski. So we wanted to share this tax rate history. Something I often hear in Winooski is how high our taxes are. So this slide and the next will have some useful data. We've got 7 years of our municipal tax rate history here. And so what you're seeing is that in previous years, leadership kept that rate increase very low in anticipation of some big asks, which you see happened in FY19, FY20. That's the Main Street revitalization funding, the pool rehabilitation. So those things happened, that work is underway, and now we are trending back towards keeping a sustainable tax rate increase. You know, these last 2 years, we've been under the cost of living so that our spending isn't exceeding the growth of people's paychecks, essentially. And so here is a comparison of Winooski to our surrounding communities. Basically, the takeaway here is that we're a small city with a small tax base providing the same services as other larger communities. So there are less of us contributing to the pot. A 1 penny raise on our tax bill nets about $50,000. You know, that gets us maybe 1 employee. The same 1 penny increase in our neighboring communities, it gets 4 or 5 times as much revenue for the city. So anything that we add on, anything we do, just the regular increasing cost of goods and services is going to be more expensive for us than for Burlington or Colchester or somewhere like that. But what you can see on here is a place like Barrie that is more comparable in size. Our rate's actually lower than theirs. Wait, are we lower?
Yes.
Yes, just a
You're right.
So that's sort of, I think that helps contextualize that for Chittenden County, we have a high rate because we are so small and we're doing more with less. But when you compare us to more communities that are more similar, it's just different. We have a different landscape that we're working with financially. And also, in a previous slide, we showed we've seen about 0.7% growth in our tax base because of development in the city, which also brings in about $50,000. So even the development and the growth that you see that folks feel like is happening so rapidly, it's not as much as it looks like. It's not contributing as much to the pot as you might expect. You know, all of our development is happening on our gateways on Main Street and East Allen Street. It's very visible and noticeable. But in the majority of the city, that sort of growth isn't happening. So it's not as much increases as you might expect. So moving away from finances, just wanted to share some, what can you look forward to in the coming year? Obviously, we will be continuing to respond to changing needs from the pandemic. That's not ending anytime soon, unfortunately. And so we will continue to adapt. I mentioned earlier the grant for the new equity director. We received an additional grant to do a policy audit to look for inequities in our local policies, and look forward to establishing another advisory commission to help us. Staff are also engaging in a citywide traffic calming policy and a parking study. So the pressure of growth and development has, made things like this more apparent to people. There are concerns about too much traffic, not enough parking, et cetera. So we're going to get some professional support to help us address those concerns. And as I mentioned earlier, we are also focusing on more sidewalk improvements. We have a historic preservation study underway, and we are going to be looking at a citywide reappraisal starting maybe this year, maybe next year. We have been ordered by the state to do so as home sales have continued to get further and further away from our current appraised values. As Jessie mentioned, we look forward to opening the pool finally this year, and also beginning that Main Street construction. And then lastly, just want to, because this isn't something we are doing, but because it's important to the community, the noise mitigation program from Burlington and the airport will begin its pilot later this year. And so we'll be participating in those discussions and making sure that our residents are up to date, and we'll be able to access that program when it is available. So that's enough budget. 2 ballot items will be on there. 2 questions for residents. The first one is in response to the state's creation of a legal commercial cannabis market. So this question is asking, would you like to see retail cannabis businesses here in Winooski? Voters have to opt in to allow that kind of business that the state has allowed, and would be licensing in fall of 2022. So we will spend, should voters move this forward, council and staff will spend time doing any updates to ordinance or regulations locally to make sure that those businesses could operate safely. The second question comes from residents who wanted to see this on the ballot. So this is a non-binding advisory question asking if we as a city should urge the state to halt F-35 flights. regardless of how the vote goes, the state will not be bound to respond in any specific way. But a lot of folks wanted a chance to voice their opinion on this topic again, now that the Jets are actually here. So those are the two items that will be on there in addition to budget and council and school trustee seats.
Kristine, can I ask you a question about the cannabis item?
Certainly.
So will every town regulate cannabis retailers separately? Is every town can do its own regulations, but everyone has to vote in order to allow it to happen in the town? Am I close?
Halfway. So the state will be regulating health and safety. And the things that we could decide on locally are, where should these businesses be allowed? Do we need to have specific nuisance controls for them? That sort of, I don't know, Jessie, if you want to add anything.
No, that's absolutely right. Land use planning sits at the municipal level. The health and safety sit with the cannabis commission at the state level.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
With that, Jessie, if you would like to let residents know all the ways that they can vote this year.
Sure. We have many ways you can vote, and if you live in Winooski, you should be receiving in the next couple of days a postcard with this information on it as well. We will not be mailing ballots out to every home, but there are many ways you can vote on or before town meeting day. So you can vote at home. You can go onto the state's website that's listed here, mbp.vermont.gov, and request an absentee ballot. We will then mail you a ballot. You can vote at home and return it to us either before town meeting day or on town meeting day, which is March 2nd. The deadline to request absentee ballots is February 26th, just to make sure you get it by town meeting day. You can also vote in person early or on town meeting day. So starting on February 10th, which is next Wednesday, a week from today, you can come into City Hall anytime between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. And vote in person at City Hall then. And your ballot you'll receive your ballot then. You can return your ballot then and be done. Or you can vote in person on town meeting day. And that process will be the same as it's been in past years. The polling place is located at the Winooski Senior Center, which is at 123 Barlow Street, and is open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Of course, on town meeting day, we will have some COVID restrictions. You will be required to wear a mask. You also are required to wear a mask in City Hall. We ask that you socially distance and respect the guidelines. I also do want to clarify, because there was the ballot item on the November ballot in Winooski to approve the charter change to allow all residents to vote in municipal elections in Winooski. That did pass in November. However, it is still before the legislature, who must approve it before it's passed into law. So currently in Winooski, only US citizens can vote on town meeting day. So those are all your options. Again, request an absentee ballot, vote in person at City Hall, vote in person on town meeting day.
Sounds like you're well covered in terms of folks coming out to vote.
I hope so. That's our goal. Make it as easy as possible for as many people as possible.
That's fantastic. I totally respect that. Now tell me also, will you all also be doing an additional presentation on the budget to the community prior to town meeting as well?
Yes, so we will be, so obviously there's this broadcast this evening, which I understand will also be available for folks to watch in the future, of course, at their leisure. On February 17th at 6 p.m., we will be holding a joint city and school community presentation. Traditionally, this is our annual community dinner, and of course, we can't do that this year. We look forward to doing it next year, but we will still be holding that information session. And then, of course, as required by state law, the night before town meeting day, the evening of March 1st, the mayor and I will be doing a virtual budget presentation again, as will the school.
Okay, so many opportunities to hear more about, dig in deeper, ask some more questions, et cetera, about the budget as folks get a chance to look at it and see what they're voting on.
Yes.
So fantastic. Yep, go ahead.
Diane, if I could just plug one more thing. If you are watching this and are interested in additional information or want to see this presentation or the ballot item, if you go to our website, winooskivt.gov/town meeting, All of this information is posted there. So again, that's winooskivt.gov/town meeting. Thank you.
Fantastic, great. And so, I mean, my takeaway, and I didn't have much time to prepare or anything, but sort of the takeaway at the end, modest increase in taxes, it sounds like, right?
Yep.
Maintaining
Yeah.
many of the services you've worked really hard to put in place. And a couple of ballot items. I think the cannabis one people have heard a lot about, I suspect, I don't know. And then the F-35 certainly has been on people's radar, quote unquote, as well. So so no big surprises. Is that safe to say?
That is right. No big surprises, no big new asks. We are continuing to move forward with the established vision that residents have asked for.
Fantastic. Well, that's probably a fantastic line to end on right there. Is there anything else we forgot or anything else you want to let folks know about before we
I'll
wrap
just say
up?
early voting starts next week. So town meeting day is coming soon.
Wow, it certainly is. Yeah, next week. Gosh. Okay. So you remember all those options for places you can vote and how you can vote. Nicely, we have our phone number here and email addresses for both of our guests with us today, the mayor and the city manager in Winooski. So hopefully you have much information for you all for the folks out there who are listening, watching, to vote on or before town meeting. So thank you both so much for coming out. We really appreciate it. It's a great presentation.
Thank you, Diane. And thank you to Town Meeting TV.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for joining.